AEW Revolution this past Sunday in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was so proud to be there to witness the final match of the 40-year career of the icon Sting, and actually from top to bottom, what a show! And to help me break it all down, joining me on the hotline, he is the man behind the Wrestling News, the Big Audio Nightmare, the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast, and you hear him weekdays with Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live. And I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 times more. He is the voice of reason for that very fine program. It is my good friend, Mike Sempervive. Mike, how you doing?
Stu, I'm doing fantastic. I'm a little bit more rested than you are after the weekend that you had, and I can only imagine what it was like to be there live because by the time the thing was over with, I was exhausted, and not only because it was past midnight Eastern time when it all went down, but because it really was an exhilarating show that had one of the most satisfying finishes to a wrestling event that you could ask for.
You know what? It was a, like you say, exhilarating. It was emotional. When when the entrance for that final for Sting's match, Sting and Darby, the entrance hit, and you saw the video package, which just fantastic. And then you hear the AEW music, and here comes Sting's sons, and I think it was Garrett is the one that was dressed in the Great American Bash 1990 patriotic garb, the gear that he won the world title in. And then his other son comes out in the Wolfpack Sting attire. First of all, when Garrett came out with the 1990 gear, place erupted. And I think part of it was everybody thought that was Sting.
Yeah.
Thought maybe he'd cut his hair. But then you look and going, holy, he's a little thicker than what I remember. And then, of course, then Seek and Destroy hits by Metallica. Here comes Sting. And I mean, you talk about just emotions, and then the match itself. My good Lord, what a match. So, but I mean, the whole card, and I think you'll agree. I think I heard a little bit of what you and Brian were saying on Wrestling Observer Live. I think both of you agree this was probably one of AEW's best pay-per-views.
Oh, no question. No question it was. And everyone's got their own opinion on what makes a great pay per view event. And look, if you're an AEW fan or if you're a fan of matches and just one after one after one, great matches, kind of upping the ante as you go up the card. If you look at shows that way, AEW has had better events in the past. But for me, for a complete show, I thought this was the best one. And when you have a closing finale, you have a main event like you do with Sting and Darby Allin in Sting's last match. I don't need to have 11 matches trying to top each other going up and down the show. What I need is what they delivered to me, which was a bunch of really good matches. Well, a bunch of matches, some better than others. I think some were really good. And then you dropped a cherry right on top of the whole Sunday with Sting and Darby Allin. And in hindsight, you think about all of the things that could have gone wrong during that match. Sting having some sort of injury or something, or the sands in the hourglass actually running out for this 60-something-year-old man diving through things. It didn't happen. Darby Allin, just by being Darby Allin, is a risk to hurt himself. And I'm sure it hurt a lot when he went through that pane of glass onto the mat 16 feet through chairs. I'm sure that actually, hurt a lot, but he was able to come back and finish the spots that he needed to in a very dramatic fashion. The Young Bucks were perfect, and I had no concern about them going in, but Ric Flair taking 2 feet to the head, this man who had 5% of his heart functioning just a couple of years ago out there being Ric Flair. I mean, in hindsight, there are so many things that could have went wrong and didn't go wrong, and it went perfectly to me. And I was one of those ones that when it was announced, the first thought that's in my head is tag team match North Carolina FTR. And you could have done that. There's a story you could have built around and did that, or there's a story you could have built with another team and Sting and Darby Allin, but Sting's decision was, in hindsight, the right decision. And as the show, it's not like as the show got closer every day, my confidence, got built or anything like that. I mean, it's the Young Bucks who are going out there for Sting's last match. I had no concern with them whatsoever, but after watching it, certainly who else could have been out there to do that, to get that reaction from people, to be so hated, and then to also act as Super Bowls for Sting and to have believable finishes where you had people just wanting to come out of their chairs and then throw those chairs because they pinned Sting, and it didn't happen. And instead, you got the complete opposite of that, which was just unbridled joy coming out when the three got hit.
Yeah. It was really interesting. So they had the media, had all of us that were media. They had us sitting with the hard cam. So I am like maybe 15, 20 feet to the right of the hard cam. So, we had a great vantage point head on. We saw everything the hard cam saw. So when Darby made the leap off the ladder onto the pane and glass and the chairs, of course, that's on the far side of the ring. And when he landed, all we can see are his legs. And of course, you saw all the medical personnel come together and checking in him and everything. And of course, we all thought, "Oh my God, it's done. Sting's going to have to wrestle the rest of this match by himself," and he almost did. But then then the medical personnel stepped away, and Darby was just laying there. So you kind of had to think, okay, I guess if they think he's okay, then I guess he's okay. He's just doing the taking the powder until the right time to come back. I want to ask you because there was talk that there was resistance, and quite honestly, it was from Sting to him winning. And as well as I do, the time honored tradition. You go out on your back. Uh, it felt like Tony Khan, and look, Tony Khan was, I mean, he was emotional the whole night. You could see it. We could see it. Not only, coming out afterwards, and you could, when he's walking down the ramp, you could see in the video, his eyes are watering. He's tearing up. And then in the press conference, he was just, over the moon, just, could not have asked for a better match. Uh, it sounds like you agree with having Sting go out on top, win, successfully defend the tag title with Darby, and end his career on a high note.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because he already went out on his back once, and he did that in WWE to Triple H.
Mm.
So, did we ever think that we'd get 3 years in AEW or whatever it's been out of Sting? No. Is he right from the pro wrestling brain to go out on his back and do that tradition and have those people take that victory and carry it on? Yes. Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I get what, as much as I love pro wrestling, that's what you do. But I grew up with Sting, and he was one of my favorites from the time I saw him in the UWF in Mid South until this very day. And as I said, I already saw him go out on his back once in what we thought may be the last time we ever see this guy after he had that career in TNA that we didn't think that he would have. Certainly not for as long as it lasted. So, yeah, there was a lot. Look, if you're going strictly pro wrestling about that match, does Darby Allin have to fall off a ladder and through a pane of glass? You can start picking nits any way that you want to, but I think when you have a guy like Sting, he's the last of the American professional wrestling heroes. And when Bryan Danielson retires, he is going to get this same level because, much like Sting, he won pro wrestling. Even more than Sting, he had to overcome a lot of obstacles that weren't there for Sting. In fact, Sting had doors open for him by just looking the way that he did. And that's, Stu, I tell you what, I was thinking about that too as the time was nearing the match where Sting is the best case scenario. Look at that weightlifter who looks good, who's got a good smile, great body, all that sort of stuff. We can make something out of him. But not everybody is built like Sting. Most guys, look, Ultimate Warrior was successful, but we know the stories and the personality differences between the Ultimate Warrior and Sting. We see it to this day when we see muscle bound guys who look great standing there. They got a lot of physical charisma, but then they can't do anything with it. And you have a guy like Sting who not only got over any of the small things that he did, but kept working hard at it and had an intestinal fortitude to him where he was not going to fail. And not only was not going to fail, was going to stand in there and trade fists with people like Vader and Rick Rude and guys like that. And these guys from Japan who, and you kind of don't get that credit for him. So I know I got away from your original question, but to me, when you put all of that stuff together, in this time and space, yeah, you could have done the time honored tradition, but I just don't think it fit the moment and how everything ended up going the way that it did. I thought fit it to a T.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Tony Khan he wasn't gonna have anything other than
No, and
Shingo,
he's
and I'm good, and I'm
he's a
good with that.
WCW guy, yes, and Tony grew up watching not watching the NWA really as much as watching WCW.
Hmm.
He was that kid. And you see it for good and for bad in a lot of what AEW does and how things are gone about there. But this was the best case, and to me, it was the right. This was all the right thing to do and the right way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, Tony Khan did announce during the press conference the tag titles are now vacated. And they're going to have a tournament to crown the new tag champs coming up soon. If you were, fantasy booking this tournament, who ends up with the tag straps?
Probably the Bucks. Um, I think FTR and the Bucks have one more go around in them, and I'm not saying that FTR has been beaten flatter than a plate of piss. I'll let
Mm-hmm.
somebody else do that, but they couldn't be any lower right now, I don't think, than they could be unless they were to walk out there this Wednesday on Dynamite and lay down in the middle of the ring for the Iron Savages or something like that. That would be the only way it gets worse for them. And I don't think that that's going to last for all of 2024. And I think you can use this tournament. One, it justifies the rankings. That was one of my thoughts going in because I didn't know what was going to happen in the main event. We all had our wants and our wishes, and I think most of us, and they listened, most of us, and they probably listened because that's how Tony wanted it to be too. They wanted to see Sting go out on top. And the question then after that was, well, what happens with the tag titles? Well, as Darby Allin continues his mission to go climb up Mount Everest, it leaves a hole open, and you have these ratings that you brought back, these rankings that you brought back, which I don't like, but here is a time where they can be very useful. And you can have your top five, rank them that way, then have qualifying matches for the final three to get in there. If that's how you decide to do it, you can have a top 10, maybe have some things going on at the bottom there to try to shake some things up and create some excitement to try to get into the top 10 and then get into the top 8 so you can make this tournament. I mean, that's how I would go ahead and play it. And I don't think the Young Bucks are now going anywhere. There was that talk that they were taking time off or whatever it was. Well, no, they don't have to. They're back in the mix. They have established characters as these evil EVP a-holes, I guess you could say. And I would assume that that's going to continue. They may, who knows, they may dial it back a little bit now that Sting is not there. They don't have to, but I would assume that that character arc is going to continue. And what a better way to brush that sandpaper up against somebody than to do it against FTR, which is still a tag team that, yes, it's not the reactions that they got last year, but they still get really great reactions. And I think that there are people on both sides of the ledger, whether you be Young Bucks fans or FTR fans, or just tag team wrestling fans that believe that they have one more round in them, that believe they haven't seen the best match between them, that believe that we have not had the real feud that we thought we were going to have when AEW started with these two teams. And I think when you look at the title picture, when you know Kenny Omega is going to be out of the mix and you need nothing with the Elite as a multi-person team, although you, if you wanted to put Hangman Page with them, you could, but you don't need them involved in anybody's singles picture. So because of that, they can concentrate on being a tag team and they can deal with everybody that's there and try to elevate these teams back up. It's been said a lot. You know, Dave Meltzer, oh my God, look at that match that Private Party had. They're going to be something. Man, look at that match that Top Flight had with the Young Bucks. They're going to be. Well, what we found out was, and what was obvious, I mean, let's be honest here, those kids were young. They hadn't done anything yet. And when you wrestle the Young Bucks, they can make you look fantastic and make you look great and concentrate on your positives and make those things, super shiny. But away from them, we've seen that the division's in trouble, and it has been in trouble, and it has been kind of floating right now. So, to me, build that back up again. You have FTR that has the ability to go after revenge against the Blackpool Combat Club. You have them going after the Young Bucks, and again, you can mix in other teams and other combinations and try to get that division humming again. I mean, we got finally an AEW World Tag Team Championship match that main evented an AEW show. If you asked me this at the beginning of AEW, I would have guaranteed we would have already had a huge trios tag team championship or certainly a tag team championship match main eventing a show at this point, and we haven't yet. And that's something that to me, well, we had it with, but it was because of Sting and Darby Allin. At some point, with the teams that they had, with how the company started, to me, it's time to get back to that a little bit and focus on that. There's a lot they could focus on, but the tag team division, to me, something that, again, tag team wrestling means a lot to me. So, I'm all for trying to build that thing back up this year.
Yeah, I think so, and I think the Bucks as tag champs that could be a lot of fun storytelling. You mentioned FTR. FTR takes the loss against Moxley and Castagnoli. Was that a surprise to you, considering the fact in their backyard, they're in North Carolina, or is this feeding into a narrative of, like you said, FTR kind of on the bottom here?
I think it feeds into a narrative, and I could be dead wrong. And there's, it can be debated how much long term thought is put into different things there. But I'd like to think positively and believe that they were both choked out and laid out and had the referee had to stop the match because they were both asleep in the state of North Carolina at the hands of the Blackpool Combat Club. And obviously, John Moxley, a former AEW World Heavyweight Champion, Claudio Castagnoli, a guy that's been a threat in the wrestling business now for 2 decades. Yes, from a kayfabe point of view, they lost to a legitimate team, but how much shine have we had on FTR? You
Mm-hmm.
know, they looked the way they looked against the House of Black. They have not looked great here against the Blackpool Combat Club. I thought going in that they would get the victory, but then seeing them lose and how they lost, it made me think that, okay, I still thought that FTR before this may be on the path to something with the Young Bucks or maybe on the path to the tag titles if they were going to be vacated. After watching it, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case unless they're leaving. And I don't think that is going to be the case. So, you know, it was a surprise, but I think if you were trying to make a statement in a story, I mean, what does Dax love doing? He loves cutting emotional promos where he talks about his daughter and he talks about how many times they've been put down. Well, you couldn't be any lower on the totem pole, as I said, unless you were battling with on ROH. Maybe they jumped over there and are doing jobs to somebody. I don't know. But I mean, look, things can't get any worse for him. It can only be looking up, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I hope it is feeding some sort of narrative. I'll be curious to see what that narrative is and where it takes them. But yeah, it was like I said, I was a bit surprised to have FTR take a loss there in the backyard. The only title change we saw, Roderick Strong beating Orange Cassidy. He's now the new international champion. Um, Now you have Undisputed Kingdom with Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, the AEW International title, and Wardlow winning that scramble. So he's got a shot at Samoa Joe on the world title. Um, I think I've seen this online a couple places, and I've heard a couple people say, I think it might be a good idea to have Orange Cassidy take a couple months off and let him heal and let the fans miss him. Give me your thoughts on that.
I'm all for that. I don't believe that and I'd have to go look at numbers. I'd have to do a deep dive backflip into the WrestleNomics spreadsheet and find out exactly what ratings have been when it comes to Orange. But there was a point in time where he'd be one of those guys that would either add viewers or would certainly hold viewers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the case anymore. The problem is with AEW right now, with as cold as they've been for the most part. I know AEW fans are going to start throwing javelins at me and everything, but realistically, from how things have been in the past, there has been a cold feeling over them. So I don't know exactly who could bring ratings to them, but I do know if you make people miss Orange Cassidy when he comes back, it's going to be an even bigger deal. And I thought they did a really good job with that match. You have Cassidy with another long international title reign. He, I thought, had to lose it here to Roderick Strong, not only for the title's sake, because you might as well start calling it Orange's title. They needed it because with Adam Cole gone and this Devil storyline that was awful over with, what do you got?
Mm-hmm.
I thought Wardlow cut a really good promo. People are mixed on that, but I thought a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite, he cut a really good promo. Taven and Bennett are the ROH champions. Incredibly underutilized so far because they've been such comedy characters. But what we know about Taven and Bennett is when it's time to perform, they can kind of do pretty much anything as a team. You know, if Bennett can't do something, Taven can, and vice versa. I think they're a great team. They have the ROH tag titles. I don't know what that's worth, but then again, looking at this from a more of a wider shot, I would want Bennett and Taven to work with a lot of people that need experience. So I get why they have those titles. And I'm okay with that. But then you had Roderick Strong that all he had left after the Devil storyline was a mustache and a catchphrase, which would be somebody's first name that he screams out really loud. What else did you have for this guy? And his personality, I think we have peaked as far as how we're going to get it over. Can he be a bigger TV star? Probably not. No. Perfect. Okay, we got him up to as much as we can as a personality. Give this guy a title because one thing we know about Roderick Strong, he can wrestle his rear end off.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he did a fabulous job holding the heat to Orange Cassidy in that match, throwing him all over the place, destroying him, getting the victory. I thought that worked out perfectly. And then you had Kyle O'Reilly come back, step into the ring and now create some doubt, now create some questions, and now create a storyline that still has MJF somewhere. It's still got Adam Cole floating out there somewhere. And now we have a question of Kyle O'Reilly. So, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, if that's what they're building to, I mean, we've seen it before and we know it's going to be good. So, I can't complain at all about anything they did in that scenario in that little world.
Yeah, I agree. I did have to laugh a little bit. So when after Roderick Strong wins, and he's got the title, and then you see you saw somebody climb up on the ring, and then when I saw him, I'm going, who is that? And it took a moment or two to recognize him as Kyle O'Reilly. New look, kind of shaggy. It was. I was like, okay, sure, new look for Kyle. Why not? But I hope this, I hope this brings some, like you said, some story to Roddy, and let's have some fun with that. Eddie Kingston successfully defending the Continental Crown against Bryan Danielson. Uh, I think on any other show, that would have been match of the night. However, for Sunday night, it might have been the third or fourth best match.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on Eddie and Bryan.
Oh, it was great. It was, and if it was the first time they were having that match, maybe I could put it over. No, I still couldn't do it. I mean, Ospreay and Takeshita was something else in the main event, certainly. I don't care what the work was in that. You hang the little asterisks on it, and just the event itself and everything about it made it worth it. I would say out of the other matches, this probably was my favorite match, and it went exactly the way again that it should have went. And they've dragged this out for a long time with Eddie looking for that handshake, with Eddie finally getting that professional verification, that personal verification from Bryan Danielson that he is on his level after all of these years, after all of the slings and arrows that he had to face at the hands of Claudio and Bryan Danielson. I mean, to me, one of the most underrated things that has gone on in the AEW ROH era, it has been the Claudio Eddie feud, and how Claudio, even when the camera is not on him during tag matches and situations where he's just glaring, they have done for longtime fans who grew up with Ring of Honor and grew up with the indie scene, especially on the East Coast. They have given you so much when it comes to these interactions. And when it got right down to it, Kingston getting the victory, beating Danielson, pinning him clean, keeping his triple crown, the Continental Classic crown, however you want to call it, keeping that, I thought is great. Now, what happens with this Continental Crown after this? I don't know. I don't know how long Eddie needs it for. I don't know how long I need him shedding a little bit of a tear for Jurna Akiyama and all the people that walk down All Japan's Royal Road. I'm kind of ready to get Yonkers Eddie back, who isn't held down by any titles or any history or any tradition, and getting back and down to the nitty gritty and thumping and the bumping again. But as far as how the whole thing ended, if because I am assuming that it's over. I thought they told a hell of a story, but it is also time, and I know Brian will complain about this on Observer Live a lot, and a lot of people talk about it with Bryan Danielson. We got it. We know you like to put people over. We saw you put over Drew Gulak in WWE, knowing damn well it wasn't going to go anywhere. And he's done that here in AEW as well. But it may be time that we start putting Bryan Danielson more in a title match, or start putting him in a mix where he could be, to me, kind of the star that they need him to be right now until they really get some more steam behind some others.
Yeah. Um, by the way, Tony Khan did confirm during the press conference Eddie Kingston will be at Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor on Friday, April 5th in Philadelphia, there during WrestleMania weekend. It does, and I do kind of question, kind of like you. So what happens with this Continental Crown, Triple Crown, whatever you want to call it? Because so is he going to defend all three titles at Supercard of Honor against somebody? And who is it? And then the other thing I think of is, okay, well, one of those titles is in a company that has nothing, that is not owned by Tony Khan. So, I would assume they're going to have some say on how they want that title booked. So I guess we will wait and see who that.
And I'll tell you what, you can put me in the category of people that said, and the problem is that the ROH world title is tied up in there too, but put me in the mix of people that would say you created a new championship that Dolph Ziggler, or sorry, Nick Nemeth has right now because you got rid of the Intercontinental or the US title slash UK title, whatever it was when Osprey had it. You create this new title in New Japan, and it's like, to me, I would love to see that belt now swallow up and engulf this one. Again, the problem is the ROH title is with it, but I don't think we need a New Japan Strong Championship anymore. The same way I don't think we need a New Japan Strong Women's and IWGP Women's Championship. I think it just at this point muddies the waters, and I get it. We got a zillion title belts, no matter what promotion that you look in, but they tend, again, I was a big belt mark growing up. I mean, especially as we started seeing new wrestling from elsewhere. I mean, I love that Inside Wrestling roll call of champions because I love Ronnie Garvin with the Mid Atlantic title, and we get the national title over here, and we got this one and that one. I loved it because I was a kid. I don't like it so much now
No, I'm,
with so
I'm
many
with
of
you.
them out there.
Yeah, I'm there with you. It's like you. I love seeing the Florida title and the Missouri title and stuff. Now it's like, okay, let's not have so many titles. You talked about Will Osprey, Kanosuke Takeshita, hell of a match of the night, early contender for match of the year. And it was so funny to so you see Will Osprey in the ring and the way he is, and then we had him in the press conference after the event, and almost a totally different individual, someone that is absolutely wonderful to chat with, but you could see kind of the nervousness a little bit, and he wants to make sure he's doing his dead level best. And that was really interesting to watch. But my goodness, that match against Takeshita, and now he's set to face Kyle Fletcher coming up. I think it's this Wednesday. I think it's tomorrow night on Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
But just reflect on Osprey and Takeshita.
Outstanding match. I mean, look, let me pick the nits first. I think Will Osprey could slow down a little bit. I think Will Osprey could register some of the things that happened to him a little better. I think he could sell some of the things, and yes, kids, there's a difference between the two. I think he could sell some things throughout the match a little bit better when something happens to him. But this was, they wanted to do a video game, and there were going to be a lot of people that were going to be overjoyed if they did that video game, and they did that video game. This was, and I got blasted by some people, how could you say this? It was Mickey Ward and Arturo Gotti, for 12 rounds where it was just dudes throwing bombs with no defense whatsoever, hoping somebody would go down, eating shots that should have knocked them out, and then stumbling after the fifth shot landed that didn't look that bad, but they had to take a step back and were rocked. I mean, that's what this was. This was Hagler and Hearns dragged out from 3 rounds to 15 is what it was. And I know it was too much for a lot of people. It was not for me because of how it fit on the show and what it was coming after, because you had Storm and Perazzo, and you had, again, good matches that took place before this, but it was unlike anything else on the show. And because of that, it stood out even more. And regardless of whether you like Osprey or not, there is nothing that you can say about his athleticism. I think he dropping some of the weight, he is not so puffy and bulky as he was, which is so important if he's going to last doing the style that he's doing. Again, one of the reasons that I kind of hope that he will slow down a little bit is just because it'll make him last a little bit longer. At least we hope it would make him last a little bit longer. Certainly AEW hopes it makes him last a little bit longer. So I don't know if they're going to put any cuffs on him. I don't know if he will have any cuffs accepted being put on him, but the reaction that he got coming out for the interview on Dynamite last week, the reaction that he got coming out for that show from a crowd of 16,000 people, and granted, did every single one of them probably know who Will Ospreay was? Actually, they didn't, because there were a lot of people that were going there just to see Sting. But from the reaction that he got when he came out and the reaction from that crowd at the end, I didn't certainly sound like to me that anybody was particularly too spicy about how the match went or anything like that. Both of these guys, I don't think, and obviously the way it's going, Osprey's going to be the biggest baby face that they have. I think they have to do that. They have to see that and go with that. And it will be the best thing that could happen to Takeshita, because he's just floundering to me right now as a member of the Don Callis family, both he and Powerhouse Hobbs both. And we'll see what they do from there, from here with these guys. But it gives Ospreay three guys that he could bump heads again: Kyle Fletcher, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Konosuke Takeshita, and then anybody else who maybe Don Callis may drag into the mix. But it's been said by others, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. This year should be spent trying to take care of Will Ospreay as the best you can, making him your top baby face, continuing to work with him on promos to get him more comfortable and to get him better on the microphone, so that when it comes time to go to Wembley again, that guy's walking out of it as the AEW World Champion.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with you. I think I don't know what it is, but the whole the connection between Takeshita and Hobbs and Fletcher and Don Callis, it's just not catching with me. I get the feeling that Osprey's going to separate himself from them sooner rather than later, and like you said, I think it'd be very wise for Tony to book him to eventually win that world title in Wembley Stadium at All In. So, a couple other notes: Darby Allin, before he heads Mount Everest, he's got to face Jay White next Wednesday when Dynamite is in Boston for big business. Um, so Sting and Darby Allin did come out to the press conference, and Darby did show off his back, which looked like absolute hamburger meat. And then we heard 12 stitches, which I'm going, 12 stitches on one wound, right? No, that's what, the whole thing. Uh, that's going to be an interesting match, Jay White and Darby Allin.
I think so, because I wonder what the deal is going to be with Jay White. I can't see him being just the microphone guy or one of the microphone guys in the Bang Bang Scissor Gang for all of 2024. Once their pre show match was over, he cut a pretty long promo out there. They're obviously doing this for a reason. Now, we hear there's going to be a major big surprise that could be taking place. Well, if that surprise is what we think it's going to be, that gentleman certainly has history with Jay White. And no matter what both of those guys are going to do in 2024, it's probably the right way to introduce those gentlemen to American fans by having, I'll just say it, Kazuchika Okada face Jay White. I mean, what better match could you have Kazuchika Okada wrestle in his first big match than have it be with one of his rivals, somebody who he's comfortable with in Jay White? So
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is leading towards Darby exiting stage right, and I have a feeling that it may be the way that we end up hearing the change drop from the sky and we get Kazuchika Okada walking out there. I could be completely way out of the mix here, but why not? Why not have that be the way it goes? Why else would you be booking Jay White against Darby Allin as opposed to Wardlow against Darby Allin or somebody else.
Yeah, no, I agree. By the way, you know, Jay White, when he gets the microphone, he could cut his promos down about 5-7 minutes.
He's still in Japan.
He is as long winded as a Southern Baptist preacher on Sunday.
And
So
why they keep giving that old boy too the microphone after matches where he's all hot and heavy breathing too? That's been the thing with White's promos that people have brought up too. Ones that did not see him in New Japan, ones that have no idea, and he had no cachet to these folks whatsoever. It's like, why is this dude? Why are these promos for so long? And he's heavy, all that stuff. And to me, it just it they have not, to me, still caught that lightning and put it in the bottle that they've needed to with Jay White. And we'll see. Now that Okada's there, now that Ospreay's there full time, and you do have the rest of that roster, I mean, to me, because this was my thing, as much as Andrade and possibly Buddy Matthews want out, fine, have them wrestle each other every week. Get something for your money, Tone, and give me something on my screen that at least if they can't face anybody else, they can face each other. Have Miro and Malachi Black kill each other every week. If they don't want to do anything else with anybody else, fine, have them go at it. And to me, I mean, Jay White, I would love to see him in the mix with some other guys.
yeah, I agree. The other notes, we are getting an April pay-per-view for AEW Dynasty coming up April 21st in St. Louis.
My idea of Falcon Crest just didn't catch on, I guess. I don't. What I really wanted was AEW soap, and I wanted to figure out a way I could get in there. So, because
yes,
that's a deep cut, but what a great show!
Man,
God, I love that show. Oh my God,
I know.
Oh,
man. Tony Khan did mention on the media conference call before Revolution that he felt like 9 pay-per-views was the sweet spot for 2024. Am I there? And I get that, but there is a little bit of, I have a little bit of a problem with just the pure economics, just because 9 pay-per-views at $50 a pop, that's some change, on top of the simple fact that 9 pay-per-views means it's a quick build for some of this stuff, where they're not necessarily known for the best builds. Give me your thoughts on Dynasty being added in April and not possibility of 9 pay-per-views this year.
Well, you're going and trying to more than double your money from what you're doing now, and trying to get that out of everybody. I agree with you. I think the economics for a lot of people they're just not going to work, even if they wanted to order those pay-per-views because the build was so good to them. There's going to be months they're just not going to be able to do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening, well, how can you not put away $10 a week and spend the $50 on the pay-per-view that month? Because there's other things that take a lot more precedence. And if the TV's not hot, if there's not enough of a reason to tune in, people are going to miss it. Now, overall, they're going to make out in this because let's say they average what, 130,000 for the average show, 140,000 let's say for the average show that they do. They'll probably lose 40,000 folks. So you're still doing 100,000, people 9 times, as opposed to, let's say, 150,000 4 times or 5 times, whatever it is. They're going to make out better. It's going to be more lucrative. I don't know if ultimately it will matter. I just don't. I don't think quality or product wise or anything like that. I'd like to hope that it concentrates things more. I'd like to hope it provides more focus and it forces more coherent storytelling, better builds into pay-per-views, because look, we've seen them have a long time to build into pay-per-views and a lot of it just doesn't catch, but the pay-per-views end up being so good anyway because when it's time for the matches to go, things are great. I mean, we'd see that in WWE all the time. It's like, okay, we may not get a satisfying end and the build kind of sucked, but while these guys are able, men and women are able to do what they do, the in-ring stuff should be pretty good. What happens between the ropes should be pretty good. So I'd like to be more bullish on it, but again, I don't think adding nine, you got nine new names. I don't know. I don't know. It's instead, still all in and all out slash Forbidden Door and Revolution and Full Gear. Those are always going to be your originals are always going to be your most important ones. We'll see what kind of sauce that they can put on some of the other ones. I mean, with all of their working relationships and the fact that their roster is so big, they can absolutely, keep things fresh. But it'll be interesting to see. I just don't think, as far as did it grow the company, I don't think it's going to. I don't know if that'll necessarily be the case. They'll make more money, which won't be a bad thing, and that's just probably the way things are going to go. But I just don't think it's, to me, I don't know if it necessarily matters. I'm not excited about the fact that, oh man, we're going to have another pay-per-view that's going to take place in February, or there's one that's now going to take place. Oh great, we got one coming in July. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Let's switch gears to WWE.
Tell you what though, if they do a 9, and they probably won't do this because of how he looks at events, but man, I would cut him down a little bit. I would not. To me, do not go till midnight. If you want to do that for Full Gear, you want to do that for Evolution, you want to do that for
Double or
uh,
nothing.
Double or Nothing, absolutely. You want to do that for All Out, absolutely, absolutely. Do that for those 4 shows. Do it for your 10 poles. That's fine. Do not do it for these other shows.
Yes.
Some people will complain, well, if you're still going to charge me $50 anyway, give me that extra hour. I can tell you that it does not add value. And in fact, I would rather have a more concentrated, that'd be a better way to me to sell it, is a more concentrated 3-hour show that is over with after an hour pre-show by 11 p.m. Eastern time. That's just me though.
Yeah. Then you add about at least an hour to an hour and a half of press conference after the
Yeah.
show.
Which does not, I mean, it's not like they are walking right into that door. There is going to be
Oh,
a natural delay that takes place, and it is not easy. It is a tough thing. When you were there live, I did it in Baltimore, and it was not anywhere near as to the times that they've taken some of these other ones.
yeah, you're right. Let's switch gears WWE, and right off the bat, Paul Heyman, the first announced inductee for the class of 2024 in the WWE Hall of Fame. Uh, Michael Cole had a great story on Raw last night about what, helping with him, and Taz doing commentary. But, the effect, the impact that he has had on pro wrestling, going all the way back to being a photographer, and then managing and running ECW and everything. Uh Reflect on Paul Heyman going in the Hall of Fame, and who inducts him?
We were talking about that on Observer Live today. I'll take the second one first. I'm not sure. I would assume it's probably a Tommy Dreamer. I think that would make a lot of sense because of Sirius XM busted open, probably having. In fact, I know it was going to have a large presence at WrestleMania. I think that's probably the way to go. I think that's the safest bet that you could have. You think about Bully Ray, he could do it, but again, I think if he came down to Tommy Dreamer or Bully Ray, even though both of them, took money out of their own pocket to do things for ECW while they were there, and they were guys that Paul really did rely on, especially as things started going towards the end. With all things even, I think Tommy Dreamer should be that guy. And I'm just not sure as you think back in time and all those people that, I don't know who else it could be. It's certainly not going to be Stephanie McMahon. They didn't have the best of relationships, and certainly not going to be Vince. He won't be anywhere near there. And with Vince being gone, it'll be interesting to see who else possibly makes it into the Wrestling Observer or the Wrestling Observer to the WWE Hall of Fame because he had a lot of grudges with people and would shoot a lot of people down for a lot of petty reasons. Will Paul Levesque do that same thing? Could we hear Ole Anderson's name be put up for the Hall of Fame? They may be pushing it there a little bit, but it'll be interesting. And Paul Heyman making it in, to me, Tommy Dreamer is probably the guy to do it. And
Yeah.
that career, as you mentioned, a lot of the kids don't know. Why would they know? That you would see as Paul was starting to come into his own. That picture in Pro Wrestling Illustrator, the picture in one of the After magazines, where it's like there's the three wise men. There's Blassie, there's Albano, and there's the Grand Wizard, and they're all surrounding Paul Heyman. It's like, how did this happen? Well, because he was a photographer and got in the wrestling business way back. Weaseled himself into a booking meeting with Dusty Rhodes down in Florida, I believe that it was. And Rhodes caught him and said, like, "Kid, what are you doing here?" And Paul, being Paul, because I just wanted to learn from the best, Dusty. I had to sit here. I had to hear you. That's right, kid. You knew you had to come listen to the best. I'm glad you came in here. Perfect. I mean, he is pro wrestling, and there's so many people and so many stories that's the one thing I hope. And I look, if you're watching the Hall of Fame, and I understand it is a TV show, there's a production aspect to it. It can't go on forever, but my God, make sure that you give time for Paul Heyman to tell any of the stories that he needs to, because this is a guy that goes back to the 70s in the WWF, and he's got his time that he spent in the AWA and in Continental. And during that time, that a lot of people, because again, what would they know? But when Eddie Gilbert went down there, and Eddie Gilbert in Continental in '87 and in '88, I should say, the original Midnight Express deal that he did in the AWA, and then later on in the NWA, his times in and out of the NWA and WCW. There's just so much that you could talk about when it comes to Paul Heyman, and just an incredible mind of the professional wrestling business, and somebody who, you talk about his influence being felt to this day. We feel his influence every day, every time we turn on this TV and see the bloodline and see the direction that thing has been taking. So, just certainly a pro wrestling character of the highest, and somebody who should be in all pro wrestling Hall of Fames. It doesn't matter their name.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Speaking of the bloodline, so on SmackDown Friday nights, you had The Rock and Roman Reigns, and The Rock turns down Cody Rhodes' challenge that he issued at Elimination Chamber, but he gives a counter offer. So basically, he is offering on night one of WrestleMania, it would be The Rock and Roman Reigns taking on Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. If Cody and Seth win, no bloodline interference in Cody and Roman's match on night two. But if Rock and Roman win, then it's bloodline rules, anything goes, all that good stuff. Plus, you had The Rock acknowledging Roman Reigns as his tribal chief, which, boy, they're laying it on thick. And then you fast forward to Monday Night Raw, just down I-35 from me in San Antonio. They're at the Frost Bank Center. It was so weird now calling it Frost Bank Center.
Shout out to the Blanchards, by the way.
I know. Cody and Seth get together, and they have, and their answer is they'll give it to you at SmackDown when SmackDown's in Dallas at the AAC. And Seth also announced he is medically cleared to return to the ring. So, man, this thing is being laid on thick, and I think the very popular theory is that somehow, some way, The Rock is going to screw over Roman Reigns. It will cost him the title, Cody will finish his story, and then it's Rock versus Roman at WrestleMania 41. It feels like that's almost the obvious way to go, and it has been said quite often. Sometimes the obvious story is the best story. So give me your thoughts on this whole soap opera, and I'll and start off by telling me, do you think we are seeing, after all these the last 3-4 years, we are finally seeing the beginning of the end of Roman Reigns as champion?
I would think so. I would hope so. This to me feels like exactly what you said. And there have been little hints here and there.
Hmm?
The Rock not getting physical at any point so far with Cody Rhodes. Obviously running him down verbally, but what did he whisper in Cody Rhodes' ear? You know? Cody said he was going to not only take the title from Roman Reigns, you know what, I can wait because I want to take it all from Roman Reigns. What did that really mean? What did that mean, Cody? And what it probably means is we are going to have a battle over the head of the table. And they have not gotten to this in the way that I would do it. Maybe this was not their original plan. I don't know. Maybe it was going to be Rock and Roman, and the people just didn't let them do it, and they decided, okay, we're not going to do it. I don't know. But what is, to me, the right thing to do is to have Cody finish this story. You can add some drama into the match if you want, because what day is Seth Rollins going to defend that title? At what point is Seth Rollins going to defend that title? And after he defends that title, will Drew McIntyre pour it on him? Say that match comes, before the tag match on night one. Say you open the show with it because you're going to close with The Rock in that tag match, technically on paper, have the women's match go right before it. And then you have Cody Rhodes and have some sort of miscommunication between The Rock and Roman Reigns that leads to Cody Rhodes winning the match, getting over that hurdle. And then, much like Daniel Bryan had to get through the hurdle of, who was it?
Oh,
Randy
Batista.
Orton and Batista
Batista, yeah.
to get to Triple H, or however that whole thing, played itself out, where you add something for that night, where you've now added some more extra drama to Cody Rhodes because now the entire bloodline, has beaten down, and that would be what talk about with Drew McIntyre's story. As much as he's complained to Jimmy Uso about losing his chances about people coming in, and now you have him benefiting from the bloodline, by having, once again, because by having him, lay out Seth or have something like that happen. I think you can add some drama into the match that way, and then after this, you can have Cody do whatever he's going to do, and then have The Rock and Roman Reigns figure out what they're going to do. I don't think it takes as long as Mania 41 because I just don't think Rock will get to Mania 41, not in the capacity of a wrestler. So to me, SummerSlam would be the thing, especially, and again, we'll have to see how they play this thing after Mania, but with the entire bloodline, I mean, if you wanted to add a woman, there was always the opportunity to do something with Naomi. Will they add Tama Tonga? Because you talk about the Hall of Fame, there's been a lot of talk about Meng slash Haku going in, and we know Tama Tonga is gone from New Japan. It is not officially official, but all signs have pointed forever that he was going to join WWE. He's an Island brother. Does he jump on board? Lance NOI is out there. Do they bring him in? Jacob Fatu is out there. Do they bring him in? Next year at Mania, I think we are more likely to see Solo Sikoa against Roman Reigns than we are The Rock against Roman Reigns. But I could be dead wrong about that. But I think all of this sleight of hand, all of this stuff, it is going to come down to The Rock and Roman Reigns again, finally pulling away because you saw it on Friday and people pointed this out from the first time that Rock did it because everything we pour over everything like the Zapruder film, but when he holds that hand up there and he holds that one up there,
Yeah.
there is that L.
Yeah.
And is that because of the L that Roman Reigns is going to take? Or is that because at some point The Rock is going to pull the trigger on Roman Reigns and remind him that he's not only the head of the table when it comes to being a board of directors member at WWE, but it is also because he is still the true head of this table. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But to me, I mean, I don't know. That seems the most obvious way to go, and I think it's the right way to go. I don't know how long you can hold off on doing this Cody thing, and they got lucky, and obviously the fact that The Rock came back and all that stuff. I mean, how many times can you continue to drag this thing? How many can we really go in? At some point, we're not talking about, what did Paul Heyman say, the sixth inning? At some point, we're talking about this is the 10th inning. We already got a guy standing on second here.
Mm-hmm.
And, is the ball just going to come and hit him in the nuts, or is the guy going to actually make it around to score? I mean, I don't know. To me, they already pushed their luck, to me, in my opinion, as far as they could with this thing. This is not 1987. This is not, we're going to see Sting or Barry Windham or Ricky Morton or Dusty Rhodes fail a zillion times, against Ric Flair, because that's the way it's done. I mean, they have gotten away with this crowd in these modern times. To me, they have gotten far enough.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, the L, I'm pretty sure it's not because he is showing his allegiance to the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
No!
That's for sure. Even if he is a Patrick Mahomes fan, let's not go there.
Oh, remember when they were relevant?
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
man.
Oh yeah. Believe me. Those tortilla tossers. Man, I'm so
Sorry,
glad. I'm so glad we don't have to go to. I'm so glad we don't have to go back to Lubbock at least for a while. I like Lubbock. Don't get me wrong. Great,
Home of Nicola Roberts, hey.
and great pizza place right next to campus. Really, really good pizza.
Ooh.
Adam Pearce announcing a gauntlet match next week on Raw. The winner will face Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. The gauntlet match will have Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Ricochet, Chad Gable, Bronson Reed, and JD McDonough. Again, pull out your crystal ball. Who faces Gunther in Philly?
I hope that's not the order they're going in there. I'll take Sami Zayn being first, but I'd like to see Chad Gable be then the last guy.
Mm.
And during that match, Sami Zayn goes through the guys that he needs to go through. There is a situation that takes place with Bronson Reed that provides some question mark. And Bronson, I don't want to say gets screwed, but there's something where he's got a complaint coming out of that match. And I hope that it ends with Chad Gable and Sami Zayn after, Sami Zayn, look, go through all this stuff. To me, he wins it by going through everyone, having then I don't want to say a long singles match, but at least 15 minutes, 12 minutes at the very least. 15 minutes, I think, would be the way to go, where it's these two now wrestling just one hell of a wrestling match with Sami Zayn after all of these guys he went through, after maybe Bronson Reed, maybe losing to him and then squashing him over and over again. Now he's got to face this Olympic level wrestler who wants this just as bad as he does because he's tired of being shown up by Gunther in front of his family. He wants that IC title. He needs that IC title. And then that leads to Sami Zayn getting over that Chad Gable hump, getting the match with Gunther, winning the title from Gunther, going into Montreal the next week as the champion. I think once Gunther is done with the belt, maybe we get a rematch. But I think him in that realm, it's gone because I think you're building towards him and Cody at some point during this year, and then you can bring in Bronson Reed. You can bring in a newly turned Chad Gable who's upset. You can bring in Logan Paul. You could bring, I mean, whoever, however you wanted the thing to go after that, then you could go ahead and do that. And I like the idea of Bronson Reed and Sami Zayn because Triple H obviously liked Bronson Reed. He was let go by Vince. They bring him back. He obviously likes the guy. He is not as tall as other monsters. He's a big guy that can do some things other big guys can't do because he's got a little bit more agility. But I think he's the kind of guy that would need the right opponent to be that monster. and I think a feud with Sami Zayn for the IC title, whether he were to win it or just go through that feud, I think he would be better off for it, and I think it would be a good way to establish him in a good first IC title feud following the Gunther Sami Zayn deal. And again, I know I'm booking way too into the future here, but to me, this just seems like Sami Zayn's to win.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like that story. I think that would work out wonderfully. And then yes, the challengers for Sammy after WrestleMania, just have them line up and just have some hellacious matches. And
Hey, look, I mean, it's going to be interesting with Damian Priest and the way that they've played Priest down is, with this whole our truth thing going on. Remember, he's still got the briefcase.
mhm.
That's a mix here too, where does he cash in against Drew at some point? Does he cash in on Seth? Does he not cash in at all because Judgment Day screws him? It will be interesting to see how he plays into all of this mix as well too, because again, one thing that they got coming out of Mania, at least on paper to me right now, is a lot of excitement with a lot of guys who are humming, and it's too bad that CM Punk is hurt. But man, Drew McIntyre is good. You can just put a little bit of steam back behind Damian Priest. He's going to be where he's at. You got Cody. You're going to have Roman, although I'm sure there's going to be some time taken off there. You still have Jay. I mean, Jay and Jimmy are, and I'm sure they're going to have a match with each other at Mania. I'm sure Jay is still going to be in the mix. They have guys and women on both the shows and in NXT coming up with Carmelo and Braun Breaker that can be really exciting. And that's the one thing that I think I would have liked to have seen, because I had no problem seeing Sami Zayn still as a bridesmaid in the title picture and then facing Drew McIntyre coming out of Mania. I thought would be good for him, if you wanted to go in that direction and then have um ultimately have, and now I just brain locked, winning the IC title. Um oh hell. You know what? It'll come back to me. I've just been talking for an hour after talking all day. I had a salient point. I got it
Okay,
lost. I'm having a JR moment. What can
that
I do?
that's okay. I get it. Uh, before I let you go,
Where the hell was I going with that? Anyway, I'll listen back and I'll put it in the comments.
um, before I let you go, we talk, Vince, you talk about a new day, and it's been a new day for a while, but in yet another sign that Vince McMahon is nowhere near this. If you ever imagine on commentary on a WWE television product, you hear a commentator not only reference another promotion where he referenced CMLL in reference to Andrade, but he congratulated Sting on his retirement. And you have Pat McAfee saying, had an epic match last night. Now, he didn't say AEW, but it was one of those things like, oh my God, they just congratulated Sting. I mean, it was a cool moment, but man, you would have never heard anything like that
Nope.
even a year ago.
Nope. And that you heard Cole quickly cut Pat off. And a lot of people are, well, did he really cut him? Yes, he cut him off just because, not because I don't think he wanted to be a prick about it, but because if left to his devices, Pat McAfee probably, as the match was going on, would have talked about the Sting match on the AEW show for a lot longer than he should have. So I think they did a good job, a really good job by just mentioning it and paying it some respect and paying Sting the respect that he absolutely deserves. And you got more than you even would have expected with McAfee talking about how it was a hell of a match, and then hey, that's all you needed to do. There's people there. Well, if this was sports or whatever, why should they? Because they're not. That's why. They're just not going to do that. Okay, period, point blank. That's it, and that's all. But we did get that, and I thought that was a nice touch because, Again, they don't have to acknowledge the competition. AEW certainly does not have to acknowledge WWE. Certainly in the ways that sometimes that they do. They don't have to acknowledge each other, but to me, this one was a little bit bigger because it was about the individual, and I'm all for paying respects either when somebody passes away by doing the card at the beginning or with a mention during the show or a 10 bell or something like that. I just think that there are some milestones with some folks. Ric Flair, same way. If God forbid something were to happen to Ric Flair, I would damn well expect to hear something on WWE's broadcast mentioning that. And I just think that with Paul Levesque in charge, I don't think that things are going to change all that dramatically between the two sides or between WWE's relationship with the rest of professional wrestling. But I mean, look, we hear it with The Rock talking about professional wrestling is cool again. We're hearing the words professional wrestling on
Mhm.
a professional wrestling show. I mean, right there. Thank God we're getting that. So hopefully, look again, that it will never be a huge thaw, a complete and thorough thaw, but for the sake of the individuals, I'm glad that they do something like that.
I am too. I really am. He is Mike Sempervive. Catch him on the Mid Atlantic Championship podcast every day on the Wrestling News, the Big Audio Nightmare, and weekdays with Brian Alvarez on Wrestling Observer Live. Follow him on X at Sempervive. Mike, as always, I always love chopping it up with you. You bring out some great points, and I always enjoy it. All the best to you, my friend, and we'll talk again soon.
I appreciate it, my friend, and I'm going to go now find out where that thought trailed off to because I wasn't going to get Okada into WWE and have him be Gunther for the IC title, but I had somebody in my mind to do it. I just can't remember who it is.
I get it. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir.